Hundreds of billions of dollars were sold on the Amazon marketplace last year. If your products aren't getting impressions, no matter how good they are, you won't get a penny of that. I'm Jassim Isa, CEO and founder of Adera. We've helped brands sell hundreds of millions of dollars on the Amazon marketplace. And in this video, I'm going to talk about top of the funnel stuff, impressions and relevancy, and how they can impact your marketplace's sales. And I'll also talk about things to be wary of. This is part of a mini series I'm doing. It's the first part of it, it's relevancy, and I'm going to jump and it's about relevancy and impressions, and I'm going to jump into what that is. So what are impressions and what is relevancy? So impressions is basically the views or the views that your product gets. And there's many different places that you can get impressions. It can be on the search page, it can be on product pages. Amazon is getting more and more creative, and it doesn't necessarily have to be ads. It could be organic impressions and ad impressions, and this is something you'll see in the statistics. They're even suggesting now that they're going to start getting impressions through their chatbot Rufus. So that's going to be interesting in how they charge for that. The other thing is relevancy. So relevancy and impressions are closely related because you're going to get impressions on relevant search terms. So if there's a Pepsi bottle and you sell a dog leash, it's very unlikely that you're going to show up on that product page. But if you're selling Coca-Cola, then yes, it could show up on that product page. So Amazon obviously's algorithm determines what's relevant for certain search terms, for certain product pages, and then you'll get impressions for that accordingly. And the more customers buy your products from a certain keyword, the more obviously the more relevancy you'll have for those search terms or those targets, and the more impressions you're going to get. So it's a kind of a continuous cycle. So the basic of the point is that if you have high relevancy, you're going to get more impressions, and obviously more impressions eventually through the funnel, you'll get more sales. What are the levers for impressions and relevancy? There's two main levers. You can keep this simple. It's SEO and PPC. SEO, you can divide into many different categories. People think of a lot of things, but honestly, 80% of the SEO for impressions is a title. That's the main thing. But there's also other stuff that helps. The bullet points helps a little bit. Alt text and the A plus content helps significantly. That's one that I'll definitely focus on. You can think of even stuff now in the pictures because the A9 algorithm is reading pictures for SEO. So reviews, question and answers, that's all part of SEO to show up and be relevant for certain keywords. And then PPC is the other part of it. What are you bidding on? What are you trying to win? Amazon obviously takes the SEO and PPC you're trying to bid on and will test you for that stuff, especially if you're newly launched. Amazon doesn't have a lot of data on your product, so they're going to rely on your SEO a little bit more. But if you're, let's say, bidding on a target that's not relevant for your product, Amazon will notice that there's no relevancy. And I want to give it just a brief example on this again. Let's say this marker right here. I'm selling it, but I'm bidding for, let's say, noise cancellation earplugs, just as an example. And let's say I had that in my SEO. Amazon might put it for impressions. It might show me for that search term, but it's going to notice that all the customers that search for earplugs are not pressing on my marker, so it's going to de-index me and it's going to rank me less. And that's something that you're going to hear with relevancy. It's what are you being indexed for? So if you hear indexing, it's closely related to relevancy. So I hope that kind of connects on relevancy and impressions and the relationship between SEO and PPC. So SEO and PPC is the data you're trying to feed Amazon's algorithm for what you're relevant for. And Amazon's going to test that if you are really relevant. Basically, the customer, and the way that it knows if you're relevant is that when a customer searches it or sees it, they follow through. They click through the product and then they convert and buy it. So if that's happening for a certain keyword or a certain product, Amazon is going to link you and make you relevant again for that certain combination. And then you're going to have a much more likely to be indexed for those keywords, and then you get more impressions on that web. So relevancy is kind of like a web of different relationships you have with either products, search terms, and all that kind of stuff. And SEO and PPC give you a chance to start fighting for those and to be attached to those products or search terms again, or other stuff as well. Now that we know that SEO and PPC are the main things, how do we maximize our impressions and the relevancy based on the SEO and PPC? So there's a few things we want to do. We want to target the right terms, the relevant terms. You don't want to, if you have a marker, to start bidding for earplugs, because then you're going to waste that spended money and you're not going to get any results. And I'm going to mention later in the video the things to be aware of on how we lost money doing that in the past. On obviously not this distinct of an example. I hope we're not that silly, but on a much more relevant example, and I'll get into the nuance of that as well. But basically, when you're bidding for the right targets, Amazon's going to notice that the shopper is seeing that product, they're getting an impression, they're clicking through the impression, they're going to your product detail page, and they're converting, they're buying the product, they're adding it to cart and checking out. Amazon, if they see that pattern happen at a very high basis, at a higher conversion rate, they're going to start indexing you and ranking you better for that. So then it's going to become cheaper to, you have to bid less because now Amazon's organically placing you on those. So the big thing is, where do you start? You start by finding the most relevant targets. Targets include either search terms, keywords, or they include products, or they can include other stuff. Like I said, Amazon's getting more creative with where you can show your product. If you're finding the very relevant ones, the ones that are relevant to your target audience, they're going to see your product, they're going to click through it and buy it, and then Amazon's going to start organically placing you there. After they organically place you there, you can lower your spend as well. So that's the overall strategy, and something very important to understand, that the better your click-through rate and conversion rate for a certain keyword or target, the cheaper the PPC and the easier you are, even SEO, to rank. Because even if your SEO is not related to the product, don't think that you can hack the Amazon system and write in this earplugs. Oh, earplugs has a lot of search volume, I'm going to show up there. What if someone buys by accident? Amazon's A9 algorithm is smarter than that. They're going to notice that almost no one is clicking through and buying it, so they're going to lower you with the rank. So I just wanted to reiterate that. So now, to wrap things up, I want to get into the 5 key challenges and lessons learned that we went through. The first thing is that the competitive niches have higher cost to bid. And the most competitive niche, the example, is supplements. We just recently are working with a supplement brand. We're used to obviously CPCs in the $1 to $2 range. So that's the marketing specialist. He kind of had a look at that. We started even higher. We knew it was competitive, but our ad budget wasn't spending. We went to $2 a click, $2.50 a click, $3, until we got to that $5 or $6 click CPC, cost per click, basically. Then the ad budget started spending, because all the competitors are spending that much on a click for, let's say, BCAA. That's a very common, the more common the keyword, the more search volume, the more competitive it is usually. So then we were spending more. But the reason, obviously, we're willing to spend more is because we're banking on subscribe and save orders. We're banking on, eventually, we have a really good product. They have 4.6, 4.7 ratings. So eventually we're going to get that organic placement, and we can dwindle down from there. The other one is that impressions alone aren't enough. Obviously, you have to make sure that your product is actually relevant. You have to optimize your image, your pricing, all that kind of stuff, to make sure that you're getting those conversions, those click-throughs, because otherwise you're going to be spending so much money. And one example for this is that we had basically a ice trap. So it was like a ice pack, and the situation we had is more designed from a structural perspective for the upper shoulders, you can say, but the picture was for the neck. So we were targeting the neck ice pack in the keywords. People clicked through because the picture looked like, the main image looked like it's the neck. But then when they got the secondary images, they seen it was more relevant for upper shoulders. Although structurally, it technically doesn't make a difference, but customers just want to be 100% sure. So we lost approximately, what was it, a couple $1,000s on that keyword. And then once we took it out of our ads, we aligned our our messaging across the board. We reduced our ACOS by 30%. We went from 40% ACOS to 28% ACOS, just by reviewing that and seeing where the leakage is happening. So make sure that you have an aligned basically messaging for your product across the board. So the third thing is, this is not a set it and forget it. Amazon's algorithm is always changing. You have to make sure that you're always staying up with the competitive landscape, the Amazon algorithm being updated, the consumer preferences. These are all changing, and it depends how established your product is. If it's very mature, it's been on the market for a few years, you can get away with checking it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. But if it's something that's recently launched, we honestly check those sometimes hourly, just because we're not sure of the market. We don't have enough data. But like I said, even for the mature ones, you're still going to have to check it. See if, let's say, for example, right now they're searching for BCAA. That's the trend. But then a new, let's say, bodybuilder comes out and said, no, he starts calling it pre-workout, just as an example. So then the customers aren't going to search for BCAA. They might just search for pre-workout package. And then that's the trendy term. Just to give a brief example on that. The fourth point is that early spend is necessary. Amazon needs to learn what your product is. They already have established products. They don't care if basically you're coming with a new product, they already have enough selection. It's a pay to play. So you have to kind of motivate Amazon to start showing your product, and you have to pay to prove to Amazon that your product is legitimate. That's the kind of platform we're in, whether we like it or not. So we do pay much more earlier. And then once Amazon proves the product, this gets to my fifth point, as you want to make sure that you're balancing between organic sales and paid sales. Usually we like to be at 60% to 40%. So if we're not getting there, and we had a product that we had to sunset because it wasn't getting to that mark, it was, no matter what we did, it was at 70% paid sales. And was it worth it for us at that point? So we just let go of the product. But eventually, a few months in, we have to get into organic sales to paid sales, a 60 to 40% usually ratio. That's a general rule of thumb. Rule of thumb. Each industry is different, something to keep in mind. But you can pull back spending as your product, again, becomes more indexed. Amazon gives you more organic, especially if you have a good product. If your product is usually less than, let's say, depending again on the category, less than 4.3 stars, the less stars you have, the less quality your product is, just as it's usually going to cost you more in PPC and all that kind of stuff, and it's going to cost you more to index. It's going to take longer, or might not be able to get it on. On the other hand, when I'm saying early spend is necessary, let's talk about a successful scenario. We had a product that we launched in the baby category that was initially 50% tacos. We spent like 3,500. We made $7,000 in the first, I think it was month or two, basically. And just because we were very confident in the quality of that product, we got the initial Vine reviews. They were very high quality. We looked at the product, we tested it. We also did pre-market testing, and we were very confident of its quality. So we were like, okay, this one we're willing to spend a lot of ads. And what happened with how what basically happened is what we thought, is that eventually we started getting organic placement. We gradually went down from 50% tacos down to almost 6 or 7% tacos. Now, it took 6, 7 months. It was gradual. But as we started getting organic positioning, we got to those sales. And that one, since it's really good, we're actually around 70% to 30% organic sales to paid ads. So that's one other like successful example of where the product sticks and it was able to prove itself, basically. So all in all, it's basically very important to understand and adapt to the Amazon algorithm. Always check what's going on. If you have a good product, if even if you have the best product in the world and you don't, it's not seen, no one's gonna know about it. So you have to push it initially. It's gonna cost, you have to get the top of the funnel, the impressions and the relevancy. And once you get that, things are usually going to become easier. Your product is going to stick. On the other hand, if your product sucks and you can just keep on bleeding money and force it down people's throat, it's not foundationally a good strategy. Do product development, see what needs to be fixed up. And we've done that for a lot of our brands. We're just a small tweak. We're able to get everything else becomes easier. But you do have to start with impressions and relevancy, as I mentioned here. So if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe. We'll be doing more of this kind of videos. Watch this video next. It talks about key Amazon advertising metrics. And drop your comments below. I'll personally reply to all of them. Thank you very much.